Hey guys, we're here back on the dyno. We have the bike ready to go. You know, I've strapped it all down. I fiddled a bit with cruise fuel settings, so I'm gonna start working up on it now, getting a bit higher in the RPM and the load cells, and then we'll see what we can get with the horsepower. So far it's all pretty under control. You know, I've got it 13 and a half AFRs, which is spot on for cruise. So maybe once we get a bit more load on it, I'll pull that back down to 12s, 12 and a half, somewhere around there. That sounds pretty reasonable. I do have to remember though that it's an air-cooled bike, so I guess it's going to need a touch more fuel to help with the cooling and whatnot, but yeah, don't really know, and no one's really that sort of open with the information about it, so I'll just have a bit of a stab in the dark. But yeah, it can't really be worse than what BMW gave me with the carburetors, so yeah, there is that. Everything else with the bike up until this point has gone pretty well. I haven't had any issues. I can see the fuel pressure and the oil pressure, and that's all under control. It does get warm if you leave it idling though with the fans off, but yeah, that's just how it is with the air-cooled bike. As soon as the fans are on, you're doing a run, whatever, it comes back down to temp, so that's perfect. And that's where we are. I'm not sure if too many of you are familiar with tuning software or whatnot, but this is kind of what you've got. On the left there, that's the acceleration enrichment tuning box. I've been fiddling with that just now, so that's what that is. On the right, that's my fuel table. That's where I change the numbers to tell the computer what amount of fuel it should be like injecting, depending upon, you know, load and RPM. That's because I've got this bike tuned on alpha N, which is throttle position and RPM. There are other ways and other tuning strategies, but that's the one I'm using, and it works well for ITB, so that's what I'm doing. Also in the background, it's greyed out at the moment because the bike's not turned on, but there's a whole bunch of gauges, and that's basically the dashboard screen of this software. Behind the fuel table, I've got oil pressure, fuel pressure, map, coolant temp, so basically just tells you how the health of the bike is. On the left there, I've got ignition advance, air fuel ratio, throttle position and RPM, so those are what I'm using to tune it basically. At this point, I'm just looking at the RPM and the air fuel. I've set the ignition table up so that it's like a bit tamer than stock. You can easily program a ECU just to put in the same curve as the distributor, so that's what I've done, and I just pulled a few degrees out of it in case I get any sort of hinky bits with like really lean stuff. I don't do any damage, and then I'll fiddle that back up afterwards, and then I'll start chasing horsepower, because you get your horsepower with your timing, not with your air fuel ratio. You get your fuel economy with your air fuel ratio, so yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah, so basically to tune the ignition, you just look at the dyno graph, and instead of having speed or RPM plotted along the bottom, you just have time. And so you can see if you're holding it at a constant throttle position, if you start giving it more or less timing, whether the horsepower output is going up or down. And it's a really cool feature. It's basically the reason why dynos are the choice. Well, that, and also you don't lose your license doing 200 kilometers an hour down the road doing a 7,500 RPM pull in fourth gear. But yeah, so basically that's the essence of tuning. You know, you just change the numbers until it's right, and then job done, go home, have a beer. So yeah, and hopefully after this life will be good and it'll just run, you know, like that's what I'm shooting for. But of course there's going to be some parts of the map where I just can't get to it with the dyno. It's a big heavy dyno. This one, it's for 1,000 horsepower cars, so putting a 50 horsepower motorcycle on it's not really the right thing to do, but yeah, it'll get the job done. Yeah, so that's how it's going to be, and let's get on to it. So this is what we ended up here. Ended up making 68 horsepower at the motor, which is pretty remarkable really. I'm still struggling to believe it, but I mean, here we are. It's on a dyno, it's all measured and done properly, so I can only assume it's correct. Other than that, I mean, so what we've gone 43.5 up to 68, so like a massive improvement, over 50% horsepower gain just by putting the EFI on it and tuning it correctly. I would say this is a pretty extreme example of what can be done, but I mean, I'm happy nonetheless, so yeah. Anyway, thanks.